Johannesburg have appealed to the Johannesburg Stock Exchange to assist with tangible solutions to help fight the scourge of gender-based violence. Demonstrators participating in the mass protest against gender-based violence have shut down some streets in the area to highlight the severity of violent crimes against women. Thousands of South Africans have also taken to social media using the hashtag #AmINext to call for criminal justice reform. These protest leaders say they need assistance from both the private and public sectors. The CEO of the Johannesburg Stock Exchange, Nikki Newton-King, received their memorandum.
It frankly is completely shameful that 25 years into our democracy, our mothers, our sisters, our girl children, our colleagues, our friends cannot be safe even in their own homes, their own workplaces, their places of study, their places of play, their places to be. Can you imagine what a special country we would have if every single one of us was able to be ourselves? Every single one of us was able to be the best us, to come to work, to come to school, to go to university, to go to the places we want to be and just be ourselves. We are denying ourselves this talent as a country, and it's really an absolute tragedy. Your memorandum makes some very important points, and we as business will take that to the Business Leadership South Africa, to Business Unities to South Africa, to our listed companies, to our trading firms, and ask them to consider how they want to respond to each of those points you made. Certainly as the JSE, we also will use your memorandum as an agenda for introspection and action. I thank you very much for honouring us with your visit.
Our reporter Hasina Gori has been bringing us updates on the march in Sandton. Let's cross live to her for the latest. Hasina, what's happening?
Good afternoon. Yes, we saw earlier the memorandum being handed to the JSE CEO. That came with a lot of resistance as well as anger from the protesters who said that there's no time for talking and for having an agenda of introspection. It was time for action. They said that they will be sitting here till answers were given to them. We saw them marching down the street. Many of them have been here from the early hours of the morning and now is trying to recuperate as well as finding shade during this heat. But with me is a group of some of the protesters here who've been here from the morning saying enough is enough. They want action. They want big business to put their money where their mouth is. They want them to contribute to some of the initiatives because there is no money, as President Ramaphosa has said, to fund some of these gender-based violence campaigns. But there's some quite interesting sentiments that we're seeing. One specific board caught our eyes, and we want to speak to this specific protester. Can you tell us? There's a misconception that when someone is raped, they're a victim, and they're not just a victim, they've also contributed to their situation, and maybe their dressing is then called out. Your board is claiming that that's not the case.
That's not the case. I'm a Muslim woman. I come from a Muslim community. I'm a South African. I know for a fact that women in our community are also raped and sexually oppressed, sexually harassed.
What needs to change in community? What kind of shift do we need so that we don't have the case where victims are then made to feel that they're at fault?
I think much can be done in the way of education, starting at the bottom with little boys. And I think that this is the start of a whole social change. I think much more can be done in terms of what the government can give us, the support systems. The justice system really needs sprucing up, and I think we need support more in the way of trauma counselling. People like Bhavani offer trauma counselling. I'm from an organisation called the Civilian Crime Intelligence Network. We provide positive synergies against crime. I think that we need more togetherness and more community participation to highlight the plight of women in our society.
Thank you so much. These are some of the other boards that we're seeing and other women that are here. Your specific one highlights the fact about actions and not words, and enough is enough. What needs to be done? What do you want to hear from JSE here today?
what we want from JSE is they should join us in this. We want to know where they stand. We want to know their own view, and we need their support, and we need their finance to do this gender-based violence, because we can't do it on our own. We can't do it on our own. We need their finance so that they know that we are serious, and it's their heart where the money is coming. So that is why we are here today, to tell them they must come down and join us so that we can fight this battle together and see where we are going to. And also we need to educate our children that whatever they are doing, we need to empower them to be aware, and also to break the silence, especially our girls, especially our children. They shouldn't be silenced. If the man say don't speak, instead speak. When they say don't speak, it means that speak and scream and come and say, even in the middle of the road, this is what happened to me. The men will not do you anything, because I know the men, they are threatening those children. They say, if you speak, we are going to cut your throat. Let them cut their throat. But we are saying to our children, we are saying to our girls, please speak up. Don't wait until 30 years, then you say you were raped. Don't wait until 50 years, you say this thing happened to you. Immediately, when the thing happened, immediately stand up and say, this happened to me. We know sometimes when we go to the police, they will say there's no proof. Now like this, we don't need proof. We want action. They are tired of wait. We want the government to stand and say this. We want them. We are tired of action. Government should say, okay, this is what we are going to do. This is what is going to happen. Then we will know that, because you are talking, we are talking. For how many years? More than a decade. Nothing has been done. Today they will be going to the prison. Tomorrow they are out. So they know that 3 square me there. They will have a bed to sleep. But we are here on the street. We are tired. You can't even walk. You can't even go next door, because you are scared that somebody is going to grab you from the road. So please, JSE, we are here today. We need your collaboration. We are tired. Hear our cry. Hear our cry. Enough is enough. Enough is enough. We need action. Let's stand together and do this. Amandla! Amandla!
This is some of the sentiments that we've heard this morning. One of them being the hashtag that has been trending since last week, which is Am I Next? And there's one female that has that on her t-shirt. As a female in South Africa, is that your fear, that you're next?
Unfortunately, we lost a link there. Our reporter Gillian Pillay, who is also in Sandton on the periphery, now joins me in studio. Thanks very much, Gillian. So you were on the periphery of Sandton, just seeing what kind of impact the protest was having on the surrounding areas. What did it do to traffic?
I think we geared ourselves up for quite a chaotic Sandton this morning, and it was to the contrary. It was anything but chaotic. There were no blockages anywhere. Police were out in great numbers, and I think that was really a good sign. A lot of people Ubering in. But the routes that you would generally find blocked on a Friday, I mean, we mid-month, close to mid-month. Sandton is the economic hub of the city, of this province. Usually on a Friday, going in and getting out is just a nightmare. But I think the protest was successful to the extent that, people heeded the call, motorists heeded the call to stay clear of the area.
Yes.
And it really made a lot of sense, and police's work was also quite seamless in the sense that they were out there. The minute they picked up congestion, pointsmen were out there, and from the sentiments that Hasina got from those protesters, this can only be successful, marches like this, if all enforcement plays a role.
That's right.
And from the interviews that we did with protesters too, they're talking around that the messaging is wrong here, Nompu. They need to look at targeting messages at the perpetrators, which is not happening. And that's why you don't see a very strong deterrent, and that is what's really why people don't want to report. And with the crime statistics that we saw play out yesterday, they're saying that rapes have increased. It's not necessarily that it's increased. The other view from activists is that more women know now that they can report.
That's right.
But it was really, really good scenes to see women out in their numbers, but also motorists and traffic around Sandton, really giving women this day to shut down Sandton without the chaos on the roads.
And I suppose there was a cross-section of women right across all social classes, because this thing affects all of us.
I think for the first time, women decided to do something for women. It was something similar to, not in the number capacity necessarily, but 1956 when we saw those women marching to the union buildings. Women today decided they are going to go to the economic hub of Sandton. They're going to make their voices heard. They're going to pick it out there. And there was no, anyone trying to disrupt proceedings or trying to get arrested per se in terms of protesters. There was no violence. It was very peaceful. I think they went there, they made their point, they got their voices heard, but I think a lot of lobbying now needs to be done with government around deterrence, so that a strong message can be sent. You know, Nompu, we've heard people talk about castration, bringing back the death penalty, that kind of thing. And it's still a long way to go before we can look at what kind of measures could possibly be a deterrent. You know, I cover these stories all the time.
I know.
But the messaging still, if you talk to any activist, the messaging, I mean, if you look at 16 days of activism, they talk about break the silence, speak up. We don't rape ourselves, we don't kill ourselves, but the messaging now needs to change so that there's so many good men around there. Why don't the good men stand up and do something about the few bad men who are doing this to our women, to our children?
To be fair to them, I think a few good men are speaking up right now, but like you say, it needs to be a lot more consolidated. The thing that I wanted to ask you, when you're out in the streets, were you speaking to motorists or even to men about how they feel about these protests?
Do you know what was particularly difficult today about that, Nompu? That the roads were so, for a lack of a better word, they weren't even like rows of cars that we could go to, because by the time you get to a motor, the robot is turning green. So that was the other challenge. But there were one or two men, and I think maybe in the next culmination of protests, if more men can come out, stand with women, maybe that kind of action and that kind of difference can be made. Maybe get unions involved so that we can get numbers on our side as women, so that we can bring the entire province to a standstill. Because it's about numbers, it's about voices.
Absolutely.
It's about, we're not saying create destruction along the economic hub, but you do need to make law enforcement and government realize that this is a very serious problem.
Absolutely. And you talked about, castration, death penalty, and of course, many argue that that's the wrong message as well, because you're dealing with the issue after the fact. We need to talk about prevention of this. So I suppose a lot of it is about socialization within the home. Men or young boys understanding how to treat young women, and vice versa, because then you'll grow and you'll know that you have to have mutual respect.
But the question also being asked now, Nompu, what is a deterrent? What can be such a strong message or measure that the next person can stop this before perpetuating these crimes? So we need to look at, yes, you're right, it starts at home. But what measure can be put in place so that I, as a perpetrator, can know that if I do this, this is the lethal or the very worst thing that can happen to me?
Absolutely. Gillian, we're going to leave it there because we could chat on and on. My colleague there, Gillian Pillay, who's been covering the Sandton protests on the periphery of Sandton. We're going to go for a quick break. More news for you thereafter.